Donald Trump has always been known for his bold and sometimes shocking ideas. He once proposed buying Greenland from Denmark, building a giant wall along the Mexican border, and now, amid the tense conflict in the Middle East, he's aiming for an even more outlandish goal, the Gaza Strip. Trump doesn't just want to rebuild this area, he also harbors the ambition to turn it into an American territory. A Dubai-style tourist paradise with luxurious resorts along the Mediterranean coast. But the question is, can a region riddled with bombs, war, and decades of conflict really become a tourist haven as Donald Trump suggests? What is it about Gaza that the United States covets? Geographically, Gaza is a small area, but it holds an extremely important strategic position. Located on the Mediterranean coast, it's about 40+ kilometers long and between 6 and 12 kilometers wide depending on the section. Gaza has a total area of about 365 square kilometers, which is larger than half the area of Phu Quoc Island in Vietnam. This is home to more than 2.3 million people, making it one of the most densely populated areas on the planet. Gaza's unique characteristic lies not only in its small size, but also in its extremely sensitive location. It's nestled between Israel and Egypt, and with its coastline, it makes Gaza an important transit point, with potential for both trade and as a strategic buffer in the conflict between Israel and the Arab world. One possible scenario is that Gaza could emulate the model of Dubai or Singapore to become a logistics and financial hub, taking advantage of its location near the Suez Canal to develop seaports and trade centers. Because Gaza has white sand and blue sea, with a cool Mediterranean climate in the winter. Before the conflict escalated, the area had some small resorts catering to locals and tourists from the West Bank. Although most have now been destroyed, if there is peace, Gaza could completely develop into a resort center. A major economic bright spot for Gaza is the Gaza marine gas field, located about 30 kilometers off the coast of Gaza under the Mediterranean Sea. The field was discovered in 2000, with an estimated reserve of 1.1 trillion cubic meters of natural gas. This number isn't significant compared to most Middle Eastern countries, but if exploited, this amount of gas would still be enough to meet Gaza's energy needs and even export to neighboring countries. Since Israel imposed a blockade on Gaza after Hamas took control of the territory, the region's economy has completely collapsed. Unemployment is extremely high, high-rise buildings have been flattened, hospitals lack medicine, and even basic necessities like electricity and water are a luxury. In that context, Trump believes that this area could become the Miami of the Middle East. Is he confusing a tourist beach with a fierce battlefield? To achieve this, Trump's plan, and of course that of the US and Israel, revolves around a very bold scenario: relocating the majority of the Palestinian population out of Gaza, then turning Gaza into a special economic and tourist zone controlled by the US and Israel. This idea may sound far-fetched, but historically the US has taken similar actions, having adopted very bold ways of controlling territories. Looking back, there is no shortage of such precedents. The US once annexed Hawaii, turning it from an independent kingdom into a state of the United States, thanks to the tactic of pumping money into the sugarcane industry. Or like the Panama deal, the US helped the country separate from Colombia in the early 20th century in exchange for the right to build and control the Panama Canal for nearly a century. Even Greenland was offered to be bought by Trump for billions of dollars for military, strategic, and resource reasons. And if one day Gaza belongs to the US, the prospect of this place could change completely. Compared to the current image, the 40-kilometer plus Mediterranean coastline would be transformed into a modern urban strip. With luxurious resorts, 5-star hotels, and expensive marinas for the ultra-rich, an American-style city would emerge, with skyscrapers featuring glass facades reflecting the sunlight, giant shopping malls, and bustling financial districts. Major US corporations like Apple, Google, and Tesla could establish headquarters here, turning Gaza into a technology and financial hub, attracting investors from all over the world. Ports would be expanded, welcoming huge commercial ships passing through the Mediterranean, transforming Gaza into a strategic seaport, playing a role in transshipping goods between Europe, Asia, and Africa. If Gaza were to come under American control, it would become a luxurious, wealthy city, but no longer belonging to the people who were born there. A bustling Dubai-like version, but at the cost of the history, culture, and even the existence of the Palestinian people as a nation with their own territory. That beautiful vision would entail a humanitarian tragedy. Where would the Palestinians go? If the US and Israel succeed in their plan to transform Gaza into an economic and tourist center, it would mean that the majority of Palestinians would have to leave their homeland. But where to? This is a question not easily answered, because no country truly wants to accept them. The closest option geographically? That's Egypt. Egypt has the vast Sinai Peninsula, which could be a place to receive Palestinians. In theory, Egypt could establish resettlement areas or even create a new Palestinian region within its territory. But in reality, the Egyptian government has repeatedly rejected this proposal. They fear that accepting millions of Palestinians will cause a great deal of instability and create conditions for Hamas to operate on Egyptian soil, directly threatening the security of the country. No one wants their country to be unstable. Another option is Jordan, where a large number of Palestinians have already been living. But Jordan has also expressed concerns that such a large influx of immigrants, up to 2 million people, would upset the ethnic and political balance in the region. No one forgets the Black September events of 1970, when King Hussein of Jordan violently suppressed the Palestine Liberation Organization. And the Palestinians are also very afraid. Then there are the wealthy Gulf states like the UAE, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. They have the resources and the land, but they have never truly wanted to accept Palestinians. Diplomatically, these wealthy nations always voice support for Palestine. But when it comes to immigration, when it comes to concrete action, they close their borders tighter than anyone. They fear that their own peaceful, wealthy countries will be affected. This has been demonstrated in many previous wars, when Palestinians had to seek refuge, but most Arab countries refused to accept large numbers. If the above options all fail, the worst case scenario is that the Palestinians will become a nation in exile. They will live scattered around the world, similar to how the Jewish people were scattered for thousands of years before the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. Looking at the tragic history of the Palestinians today, there are striking similarities to the history of exile of the Jewish people. For 2,000 years, they did not have their own country, were always considered outsiders, had to live in isolated ghettos in Europe, were discriminated against and even brutally persecuted, as happened during World War II. Now, if the US and Israel succeed in their resettlement plan, the Palestinians could face a fate similar to that of the Israelis in the past. They would be pushed out of their homeland, forced to live as second-class citizens in other countries, without political rights, without their own territory. Constantly used by major powers as pawns in the political game in the Middle East. However, there is one important difference. The Jewish people had a history of exile, but they maintained a strong culture and religion, which helped them revive the State of Israel. Meanwhile, the Palestinians, without their own country, could gradually be assimilated into other nations and lose their national identity over time. The world has opposed this. Forcing millions of Palestinians to leave their homeland is nothing short of forced migration. Like the time in 1948 when Israel was established and hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were also expelled from their homeland. The United Nations would certainly strongly condemn this, as it would be the largest forced migration since the mid-20th century, violating a series of international covenants. China and Russia would also not miss the opportunity to criticize the US and could provide weapons or financial support to Palestinian resistance groups to undermine Western influence in the Middle East. As for the Arab countries, the reaction would be very complex, although they always support Palestine in theory in their statements. In reality, they might tacitly agree with this plan as long as it does not affect their interests. For example, Saudi Arabia could take advantage of this opportunity to negotiate favorable agreements with the US and Israel by tacitly supporting it. Let's assume that everything goes as Donald Trump wishes and Gaza actually becomes a financial and tourism special zone. Who would benefit? The simple answer: American and Israeli investors and some Gulf billionaires. Gaza would no longer belong to the Palestinians, but would be a special zone controlled by large financial corporations. A new Las Vegas, perhaps, with restaurants and hotels but no place for the local people. However, what is the chance of this plan becoming a reality? If Hamas still exists, if the Palestinians refuse to leave, if the Arab world continues to oppose it, then this is just a distant, delusional dream of the United States, or worse, a pretext to consolidate the US presence in the Middle East. Whoever controls the land controls history. Currently, the Palestinians are at risk of losing their homeland. But it is also from the most difficult circumstances that nations can find a way to survive. Will Palestine disappear like ancient civilizations, or will it survive to write its own story? What is your opinion on this issue?